on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is choice and how we can awaken to our opportunities to choose in any given moment. In fact, we actually are, whether we're consciously choosing or not, we're always making choices. So let's look at that and how we can empower ourselves in those choices going forward. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating all your cells, all your electrons, all your molecules, electrifying, energizing, illuminating. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling, the tingling, and allow yourselves to become present right here, right now, in these magnificent bodies that enable us to experience the marvels of life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so good to be here with you, as always. So much appreciation to you for joining in these morning musings. And let's look at choice, because I think that a lot of us go through life, or lots of circumstances of life anyway, feeling like we don't have any choice about it. You know, I've heard people in conversation say, well, I don't have a choice. And the truth is, we always have choice. We may not be present to it. We may be making our choices unconsciously, but we do have choice. And I think that recognizing that we have choice in any given moment is super, super empowering. And I have a friend who, and this is kind of an extreme circumstance, but I have a friend who, due to malicious actors, shall we say, ended up in jail unjustifiably for a ridiculous period of 3 weeks. I mean, you couldn't write the circumstances that led to this this incarceration, you know, for this period of time. You couldn't make this stuff up. It's just so horrific. But anyway, this person ended up in jail for 3 weeks, working with community and lawyers and whatever to be able to correct this whole real miscarriage of justice. And what they said was, there was a period of that time where they were in isolation. You know, they just had no communication, and they used that time to meditate. They used that time to really deepen their connection with the universe, with their higher self, with their own presence. And that was a choice. Here was an environment where their opportunities for communication there were limited, where their comforts were extremely limited. And the choice that this person made was to expand themselves in that, to take the internal freedom, to recognize their internal freedom, that the walls and the circumstance were not going to dictate the experience of life, their quality of life. And that may be an extreme example, but it is a perfect example to allow us to recognize that we all always have that kind of choice and opportunity available to us. And we get to decide whether we are going to allow ourselves to be victimized, to experience being a victim, versus to find our path to empowerment. And this is an important reminder, especially because given life's events for many of us, we might feel that we are at the effect of life. Good morning, Josie. So wonderful to have you here with us. Welcome. And today we're talking about choice and how in any given moment we are able to exercise choice. And the first key to being able to exercise choice certainly is to remember that we have it. And Josie, I see you say you've been ill. I'm so glad that you're back. I hope you're fully recovered. And it's so good to have you chiming in. So choice, how I think that this is it's a big deal right now. I have another friend who is working in an environment where they are mandating the vaccine. And this person has already been fully vaccinated voluntarily. And now they are requiring acknowledgement of, this policy that people are going to be discharged or fired if they don't comply. And it was very interesting to be hearing about this person's reaction to being strong-armed into doing something, that it actually, they already voluntarily chose to get vaccinated, but when faced with the mandate, it brought up a whole lot of resistance and the feeling that choice was being taken away. And I think we encounter all different experiences in life that challenge us to remember that we have choices. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for the choices we make. There are consequences. And the bottom line is that we still have choice. And when I think that ironically, in some ways, people find some freedom in saying they have no choice. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning. I just have to tell you guys that I had the privilege and pleasure of meeting Rosalind in virtual world yesterday, and I just want to say what a delight it was to meet you, Rosalind, and put a face to the name and be able to have a wonderful conversation. And good morning, Veronica. So good to have you here with us. I don't think I've seen your name here before. Welcome. And today we're talking about choice and to remember in a given circumstance that we do have choice. We can choose to awaken in any given moment. We can choose to awaken to the fact that we have choice. That's a big deal. And when we recognize that we have choice, we then take a different degree of responsibility for our experiences. You know, like in a given moment, I can feel miserable or I can find my freedom, like my friend did, who was wrongly jailed, you know, to be able to be present enough to our own power in our lives to choose, you know, like this person couldn't choose the circumstance in that moment, but they could choose how they were being in that circumstance. And so when we look at a circumstance in life that is particularly challenging, for example, we can say, you know, I have to go along with this. I don't have a choice. Well, even if that were the case, we still have the choice about how we're being. We have our choice of beingness in the face of circumstances. So we can be victimized, we can be empowered, we can be peaceful. You know, we can find a place of sovereignty, which is what choice is about, right? It's about exercising our own will or intention, right? To be actively choosing. Years ago, I took a training that was called, years and years ago, it was called the EST training, and then it evolved into landmark education. And one of the things that has stuck with me for these many, many years is the statement they made that it's easier to ride the horse in the direction it's going. So there are times when life is unfolding the way that it is, and we can kick and scream against it, and it's not really going to change it. Or we can kick and scream against it and it will change it, or we can ride with it, or we can find a way of peace and still object. You know, they're all different ways of being, but we get to choose. And this is such an important, critical thing for us all to remember, that we are creators in our lives, even if it's at a micro level, which isn't so micro, which is to be choosing our response to things, to be choosing the emotional state, to be choosing the meaning that we're making for things. And we get to be making these choices for ourselves and for our lives. And so look at a situation in your life where you feel that you have no choice. Look at in those situations, in that situation where you feel you have no choice, let's look again to see, well, what do I have a choice about? I may not be able to shift the circumstance, but I can shift my experience of it. I can shift my response to it. And the thing that's important when we're looking at choices is to recognize that we don't have control over the way that other people are going to be. We just don't. So we do, however, have a degree of autonomy in that we can determine how we're going to respond, right? This is a big deal. And so, for instance, maybe there are circumstances in life where we get enraged, you know, where we're triggered and we get reactive and we get angry. And in those moments, it's as if we're being swept away by something that we've kind of given ourselves over to. And we do, if we have the awareness. So awareness is what transforms choice, I think, is, or awareness is what expands choice. Because when we have a moment of awareness in the midst of a reaction that is kind of automatic or robotic, then we can extract ourselves from that almost programmed behavior to engage or to choose to engage at a different level, right? So that's the invitation. The invitation is maybe the practice could be for a day, to set an alarm for maybe every 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And when that alarm goes off, to say, what am I choosing? What am I choosing now? So Rosalind says, choices can feel like ultimatums. If I do this, then I'm that. You can be in a place where you are both things, coming into and out of both. So I think you bring up a really good point that, I can choose right, I can choose wrong, I can choose yes, I can choose no. I think we can take that further. First of all, I think that we are not our choices. We make choices. And this is a really important point, I think, because it's a choice to make the interpretation. If I do this, then I'm that, for example. Like if I do this, I'm bad, or I'm good, or I'm wrong, or I'm right. That's we can choose whether or not to label ourselves and interpretations of our experience, right? So I agree, you can be in a place where you are both things or all things, really, and our beingness, who we are, is not our choices, because we've all made bad choices, right? Or we've all made choices that led to consequences that we would have preferred to have unfolded differently, right? We've all been in situations where we've done something or said something that perhaps we regretted. We made choices that perhaps didn't best serve us or our circumstances, or serve others that we would want to be treating differently, for example. We've all done that. And does that make us this or that? As you're saying, Rosalind, it doesn't, because we do hold polarity. We do hold the spectrum of being. We are all things. And I've said this before, but when I think of how we're told very often, well, just let it go, right? And as Westerners, I don't think that we're very adept at letting go. And therefore, I came up with, and it works for me, maybe it'll work for you, to say that I expand to include that. So I expand to include the choices that I would prefer not to have made. Things that I might interpret as errors or failures, I expand to include that. I expand to include the choices that I've made that have resounded well with me, or that have resulted in positive consequences that I interpret as positive or desirable or desired. And that we are fluid beings. We are not one thing. And this is also a choice, to be perceiving the way that we choose to perceive ourselves. So many of us choose to put ourselves in boxes by creating judgments or identities for ourselves that limit our expression. And perhaps some of those limits to expression are maybe socially beneficial. Like, I won't do that because I'm a good person. Like, I won't do this, that, or the other thing because I am a good person, for example, where we put constraints. I think that the truth of the matter is more, I won't do that because I choose not to. And I choose not to because my choices are founded in certain principles that I guide my life by. And if we guide our life by certain principles, those principles also are choices. Now, the thing is that there are very many choices that we're guided by that are unconscious. Like we didn't consciously choose the things that influence us necessarily. And that's where awareness comes in, and why awareness is the foundation of true conscious choice. Because it's not until we become aware, perhaps, that we weren't being conscious, that we get to choose differently, right? When we're moving along in a situation, many hours of our days are kind of unfolding in an unconscious fashion, where we're not really present to our experience and to the choices that we are making or have made. And if we set that alarm and then in that moment say, what am I choosing? That gives us a conscious opportunity to choose differently, perhaps. And I think that it could be a very helpful and freeing, enlightening kind of exercise to do, to recognize that we really are capable of making choices in any given moment. Now, I recognize that that level of awareness, or cultivating that level of awareness, can take some work, right? It might not be something that comes naturally in any given moment, that it's something that we may be able to train ourselves into. Again, the choice, what am I choosing? And we can also be looking at what we're choosing to recognize what our priorities are, or even our unconscious priorities. Oh, excuse me. Rosalind says, choices on a menu are sometimes hard for me. So there's a restaurant called Taste where you choose 2 to 3 items to build your plate. Then you don't have to commit to eat just one thing, sort of like a buffet. I love that. Rosalind, that's so awesome. That's such a cool thing because I get, you have all these choices. And this goes to commitment too, by the way. There are all these choices. If I commit to one, what am I losing out on? Like if I commit to choosing this item from the menu, then I'm not getting to choose that. But I love the idea that you get to taste from multiple things. That's brilliant. So anyway, guys, I'm going to call it a morning. I thank you for being here with me and engaging in these conversations. You really, truly enrich my mornings and my life. And I'm so grateful to you for that. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page at 9 a.m. Eastern. And please check out the other awesome Enlightened World Network programming, as well as Enlightened World Living and EWN One with the Earth. So much love and appreciation for you. And I hope to see you again back here really, really soon.